The work took 3 weeks, and every day brought new wonders that challenged everything Jake Morrison thought he knew about technology and engineering. Architect had opened the deepest vaults of Corvin knowledge to them, revealing secrets that made even Lisa Park's brilliant mind struggle to keep up with the possibilities. The Defiant scrap sat in the middle of a vast underground repair facility that Architect had awakened from centuries of sleep. Automated systems moved around the damaged human vessel like mechanical surgeons, carefully removing burned-out components and replacing them with technology that had been waiting half a millennium for someone worthy to use it. Lisa spent most of her time in a state of barely controlled excitement, working alongside Corvin maintenance drones to integrate systems that should have been completely incompatible. "Jake, you have to see this," she called from beneath the ship's main power coupling. "They're installing quantum resonance generators that can tap directly into subspace energy fields. We'll have more power than a coalition dreadnought. The changes went far beyond simple repairs." Ben Carter discovered that his navigation console had been completely rebuilt with sensors that could track individual molecules across interstellar distances. Amy Stone's communication array now included translation protocols for over 3,000 languages, including several that had been considered completely untranslatable by coalition linguists. Sam Brooks found that the ship's medical bay had been expanded into a full hospital facility with healing technologies that could regrow lost limbs or cure genetic diseases. But the most dramatic transformation was happening to the ship's outer hull. The mismatched armor plates and jury-rigged components that had made the Defiant scrap look like flying junkyard were being replaced with sleek black panels that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The new hull material was adaptive, capable of changing its configuration in response to different threats or mission requirements. "It still looks like scrap from the outside," Ben observed, watching the installation process through the ship's external cameras. "Just very expensive, very dangerous scrap." Architect had explained that the disguise was deliberate. "Your enemies will continue to underestimate you as long as they believe you are still flying a primitive salvage vessel. This advantage will serve you well when the time comes to face them." That time came sooner than anyone expected. Amy was monitoring long-range communications when she detected familiar signal patterns approaching the edge of the star system. "Jake, we've got company." "Incoming." "Multiple ships, coalition transponder codes, and they're broadcasting Zephyrian military frequencies." The main display activated to show Admiral Vextar's battle fleet dropping out of quantum space at the system's edge. 3 heavy cruisers, 6 destroyers, and a command dreadnought that bristled with enough firepower to reduce a planet to rubble. The same ships that had left them behind during the original mission had somehow tracked them to Corvin Prime. Jake settled into his captain's chair, feeling the familiar weight of command responsibility settling on his shoulders. The chair felt different now, more responsive, with control interfaces that seemed to anticipate his needs before he expressed them. "How long before they reach our position?" Ben checked his new sensors. "At their current speed, about 6 hours. But Jake, there's something wrong with their approach vector. They're not acting like they're here on a rescue mission." Amy was already intercepting and decoding the fleet's tactical communications. "They're preparing for ground assault operations," she reported. "Strike teams, heavy weapons, demolition charges. Vextar isn't here to save us. He's here to make sure we never leave this planet." The pieces of the puzzle clicked together in Jake's mind. Vextar had known about Corvin Prime all along, had probably arranged for their ship to be sabotaged and diverted here. Now he was coming to clean up the loose ends, eliminating both the human witnesses and whatever remained of Corvan technology. Architect, are your planetary defense systems still functional? The AI's voice carried a note of regret. I am afraid not, Captain Morrison. The main defense grid was destroyed during the final battle 5 centuries ago. This facility has concealment, systems, and limited shielding, but nothing that could stop a determined military assault. Lisa emerged from the engine compartment, her hands covered in exotic lubricants that glowed softly in the dim light. The ship's ready to fly again, but I don't know how well our new systems will work under combat conditions. We haven't had time to test anything properly. Jake made his decision quickly. We're not running away. If Vextar wants a fight, we'll give him one. Maybe it's time someone stood up to these coalition bullies and showed them what happens when they push too hard. Sam looked worried. Jake, that's a full battle fleet out there. Even with our upgrades, we're still just one ship, against 9. The odds are pretty bad. The odds were bad for the Corvan, too, Jake replied. But they lost, because they weren't prepared for the kind of war their enemies brought to them. We know what we're facing. Amy was studying the tactical situation on her enhanced displays. I might be able to even the odds a little, she said. Our new communication systems can hack into coalition military networks. I can't shut down their ships, but I might be able to cause some confusion and coordination. Problems! Ben was already plotting an intercept course that would bring them into contact with the enemy fleet before it reached the planet. If we're going to do this, we should hit them while they're still in deep space. Once they get close to the planet, they can use orbital bombardment to destroy everything down here. The Defiant scrap lifted off from Corvan Prime with a silence. That seemed impossible for a ship of its size. The new propulsion systems generated no visible exhaust and produced energy signatures so low that they would be almost undetectable to coalition sensors. As they climbed toward orbit, Jake could see the abandoned cities falling away below them, empty monuments to a civilization that had been erased by the same enemies they were about to face. The first sign that something had changed came when Admiral Vextar's flagship tried to lock targeting sensors on the approaching human vessel. Instead of the clear readings they expected from a primitive Earth ship, their displays showed confusing interference patterns and sensor ghosts that made accurate targeting nearly impossible. What is that piece of junk doing to our sensors? Vextar demanded from his command bridge. I want that ship destroyed immediately. His weapons officers were having their own problems. Every time they achieved target lock, the human ship seemed to shift slightly in space, as if it existed in several different locations simultaneously. Energy beams passed harmlessly through what appeared to be solid hull sections, while missiles detonated against empty space where their sensors insisted. The target should be. Jake watched the enemy fleet's confusion with G. The holographic displays around the crystal throne shifted and expanded, filling the vast chamber with images that seemed to float in the air like ghosts from the distant past. Jake Morrison and his crew stood transfixed as scenes of a thriving galactic civilization played out before their eyes in vivid detail. They saw the Corvan at the height of their power, not as the monsters or tyrants that coalition history books described, but as a diverse collection of species working together across thousands of star systems. Tall, elegant beings with silver skin stood beside stocky, four-armed creatures covered in natural armor. Floating jellyfish-like entities with translucent bodies shared workspace with bipedal reptiles, whose scales changed color as they communicated. Dozens of different alien forms collaborated on massive engineering projects, scientific research, and cultural exchanges that spanned entire sectors of the galaxy. The Corvan Empire was not an empire at all, Architect explained, his electronic voice echoing softly through the chamber. It was a voluntary alliance of species who chose cooperation over conquest. We called ourselves the Unified Worlds, and for nearly 3,000 years we brought peace and prosperity to this region of the galaxy. Amy Stone was frantically taking notes on her portable recorder, trying to capture every detail of what they were seeing. But Coalition records say the Corvin were aggressive expansionists who threatened neighboring civilizations. The displays shifted to show star charts and historical timelines that painted a very different picture of galactic history. "Your coalition was built on lies," Architect replied. 500 years ago, a group of younger species formed a secret alliance against us. They feared our technological advancement and our influence over galactic politics. The Zephyrians led the conspiracy, along with the Vardak, the Solari, and several other species that now control your coalition. Jake felt his stomach drop as he recognized the names. These were the same species that had just assigned his crew to clean up the supposedly dangerous Corvin systems. "What happened?" Genocide Architect answered simply. "They called it the Liberation War, claiming they were freeing oppressed worlds from Corvin tyranny. In reality, it was a coordinated extermination campaign designed to eliminate any species that might challenge their future dominance." The holographic scenes changed to show massive battle fleets converging on peaceful worlds. Lisa Park watched in horror as coalition warships opened fire on civilian targets, destroying cities and space stations that offered no resistance. The attackers used weapons that seemed designed specifically to cause maximum suffering, turning entire planets into radioactive wastelands where nothing could survive. "The war lasted only 6 months," Architect continued. "We had superior technology, but we were not prepared for such ruthless tactics. Our ships were designed for exploration and defense, not for the kind of total warfare they brought to us." One by one, our worlds fell silent. Ben Carter was studying the star charts displayed around them, comparing them to his own navigation data. "This planet, where are we exactly? This is Corvin Prime, the capital world of our alliance, and the last system to fall." Architect's voice carried a note of sadness that seemed strange coming from an artificial intelligence. "I am the central control system for our entire civilization, built to coordinate communication and resource distribution across all our member worlds. When the attacks began, my creators programmed me to preserve their knowledge and wait for someone worthy to inherit their legacy." Sam Brooks had been quiet during most of the conversation, but now he spoke up. "How many survived?" "None," Architect replied. "The attackers were very thorough. They used biological weapons on some worlds, orbital bombardment on others. A few populations tried to evacuate, but the coalition forces hunted down their refugee ships and destroyed them in deep space. Within a year, every trace of Corvin civilization had been erased from official galactic records. The displays showed the aftermath of the war, with coalition species moving into former Corvin territory and claiming it as their own. Advanced Corvin. Technology was studied, copied, and integrated into coalition systems, but the original creators were never acknowledged. Entire scientific breakthroughs that had taken the Corvin centuries to develop were presented as recent coalition discoveries. Your modern ships, your faster-than-light communication systems, even your universal translators, Architect continued, all based on technologies we developed thousands of years ago. The Coalition built their current power on our graves. Amy was cross-referencing the historical data with her own knowledge of Coalition technology. Some of this matches gaps I've noticed in the official records. Scientific advances that appeared suddenly with no clear development path, technologies that seem too advanced for the species that claim to have invented them, Jake was thinking about their current situation and how they had ended up here. Our ship was sabotaged before we left Coalition Station Alpha. Someone wanted us to crash on this planet. Was that you? No, Architect answered. I have been isolated here for 5 centuries with no way to contact the outside galaxy. Your arrival was either an accident or the work of someone else who knew the truth about this place. I suspect Admiral Vextar may have been involved. Lisa looked up from the technical displays she had been studying. Vextar? That arrogant blue-skinned fool who insulted us at the briefing? Admiral Vextar is a direct descendant of War Commander Kethvar, who led the final assault on this system, Architect explained. The Vexitar family has maintained secret knowledge of Corvin Prime's location for generations, using it to advance their own political careers within the hegemony. He may have sent you here to eliminate me permanently, or he may have had other motives. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They were stranded on a planet that officially did not exist, surrounded by the ruins of a civilization that had been systematically erased from history. The same species that now controlled the Coalition were responsible for one of the greatest acts of genocide in galactic history, and they had built their current power on stolen technology and lies. Ben was still studying the technical readouts, floating around them. Some of this technology is incredible. These power generation systems are hundreds of times more efficient than anything the Coalition has. And these weapons designs. He trailed off, looking uncomfortable. The Corvin were peaceful by nature, Architect said. But we were not defenseless. Our weapons were designed to disable enemy ships and protect civilian populations, not to cause unnecessary destruction. If these systems were properly restored, a single ship could defend itself against an entire Coalition fleet. Jake felt a cold chill as he realized what the AI was suggesting. You want us to help you rebuild Corvin military technology. I want to offer you a choice, Architect replied. Your species, humanity, is in a position very similar to where the Corvin were 500 years ago. You are newcomers to the galactic community, with potential that threatens the established order. The Coalition will eventually move against you, just as they moved against us. The question is whether you will be prepared when that happens. Amy looked up from her notes. What kind of preparation are you talking about? The displays around them changed to show technical specifications for advanced weapons, shields, and propulsion systems far beyond anything Earth had ever imagined. I can offer you the complete technological legacy of the Corvin Alliance, including the accumulated knowledge of dozens of species who contributed to our civilization over thousands of years. With this information, humanity could become the most advanced species in the galaxy within a few decades. Lisa was practically drooling over the engineering diagrams floating past her eyes. The things we could build with this knowledge, we could solve every technical problem Earth has ever had. There is a price, Architect continued. This knowledge comes with responsibility. The Corvin fell because we were too trusting, too willing, to believe that other species shared our values of cooperation and mutual respect. We failed to recognize the threat until it was too late. Humanity must learn from our mistakes. Sam was studying biological and medical data that showed treatments for diseases and genetic disorders that Earth science had barely begun to understand. This could save millions of lives back home. Jake, looked around at his crew, seeing the wonder and excitement in their faces as they absorbed the incredible opportunity being offered to them. But he also remembered the images of burning worlds and refugee ships being destroyed in deep space. Power came with a cost, and that cost was often paid by others. "What happened to the species that destroyed you?" he asked. "Are they still in power?" "They evolved into your current coalition leadership," Architect answered. "The same families, the same political structures, the same ruthless methods. They have convinced themselves that their actions were justified, that they saved the galaxy from Corvan oppression. But oppression was never our way." The AI paused, and when he spoke again, there was something almost human in his electronic voice. "I have waited 500 years for someone to find this place, someone who might be worthy of carrying on the Corvan legacy. Your species shows promise, but promise alone is not enough. You must prove that you can handle this responsibility. Without..." The quantum jump should have been routine, just another faster-than-light leap between star systems that any spaceship could handle without trouble. Ben Carter had programmed the navigation computers 3 times, double-checking every calculation and coordinate before confirming the jump sequence. The Coalition fleet had made the transition smoothly, their advanced ships sliding through quantum space like knife blades through silk. Then everything went wrong. Warning alarms screamed through the defiant scrap as the ship tumbled out of quantum space in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The main display showed nothing but static, and half the control panels were dark or flickering wildly. Jake Morrison gripped his captain's chair as the ship spun end over end. Artificial gravity, failing in random sections and sending loose equipment flying through the air. "Report!" Jake shouted over the noise of groaning metal and failing systems. Lisa Park was already crawling under her engineering console, pulling out burned circuit boards and trying to bypass damaged systems. "Navigation array is completely fried," she called back. "Whatever hit us overloaded every quantum field generator we've got. We're flying blind." Amy Stone worked frantically at her communications station trying to raise the rest of the Coalition fleet. "No response from Admiral Vexitar or any other ship," she said. "I'm not even picking up their transponder signals. Either they're too far away to detect or our receivers are completely shot." Ben checked his instruments and swore quietly. "We're way off course. I mean way off. The star patterns don't match anything in my navigation database. According to these readings, we're somewhere near the galactic core region, but that's impossible. We should be in the outer spiral systems where the Corvan territories are located." Jake felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Being lost in space was bad enough, but being lost near the galactic core meant they were surrounded by some of the most dangerous phenomena in the galaxy. Black holes, neutron stars, and massive radiation storms could kill a ship in minutes if they wandered into the wrong system. The ship's computer finally managed to stabilize their tumbling motion, but the artificial gravity was still unreliable, and the air recycling systems were making unhealthy grinding noises. Sam Brooks moved through the ship checking for crew injuries, while Lisa continued her desperate attempts to restore basic ship functions. "I've got something on the short-range scanners," Ben announced. "There's a planet about 2 million kilometers ahead of us. It's got an atmosphere and what looks like a stable orbit around a yellow star." Jake studied the fuzzy image on their damaged display screen. The planet appeared to be about Earth-sized, with blue oceans and brown continents visible through swirling white clouds. It looked almost peaceful from this distance, but Jake knew that looks could be deceiving in space. "Can we reach it?" he asked. Ben ran some quick calculations. Maybe if Lisa can get the main engines working. We've got enough fuel for one more burn, but after that, we're stuck wherever we end up. Lisa's voice echoed from inside an access panel where she was replacing burned-out components. I can give you about 30 minutes of engine power, but that's it. After that, we'll be running on emergency batteries and whatever solar power we can collect. It was not much of a choice. They could try to reach the planet and hope it was safe enough to land on, or they could drift in space until their life support systems failed. Jake made the decision quickly. Take us in, Ben. Find us a landing site that won't kill us on impact. The approach to the planet took 6 hours of careful maneuvering with damaged engines and failing navigation systems. As they got closer, Ben was able to gather more detailed information about their destination. The planet had breathable air, comfortable temperatures, and no obvious signs of dangerous weather patterns or geological activity. What it did have was something much more interesting. "Jake, you need to see this," Amy said, her voice tight with excitement and worry. "I'm picking up artificial structures on the surface, big ones. This planet isn't uninhabited." The main display flickered to life long enough to show them what Amy's sensors had detected. Massive cities covered entire continents, their towering spires reaching high into the atmosphere. Gleaming roads connected urban centers across thousands of miles, and what looked like spaceports dotted the landscape at regular intervals. It was clearly the work of an advanced civilization, possibly more advanced than anything the Coalition had ever encountered. But there were no energy signatures, no radio transmissions, no signs of any activity at all. The cities looked perfect from orbit, but they were completely silent. "It's like they just vanished," Ben whispered. "Everything's still there, but nobody's home." Jake stared at the image, feeling pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. A dead civilization with incredibly advanced technology, located near where the Corvin system should be, discovered only after their ship had been mysteriously thrown off course by some kind of sabotage. "Lisa, how are those engines holding up?" "About 5 more minutes before they shut down permanently," she replied. "I hope you found us a nice soft landing spot." Ben was already scanning the surface for suitable sites. Most of the planet was covered by the mysterious cities, but there were some open areas that looked flat enough for an emergency landing. He selected a wide plain about 50 kilometers from one of the smaller urban centers and began their final descent. The Defiant scrap hit the ground hard, bouncing twice before sliding to a stop in a cloud of dust and scattered debris. Emergency. Systems activated automatically, sealing hull breaches and maintaining life support, while the crew recovered from the impact. Jake's ears were ringing, and he could taste blood where he had bitten his tongue, but everyone seemed to be alive and conscious. Lisa was the first one up and moving, checking damage reports and trying to determine if the ship could ever fly again. "Well, the good news is that we're on solid ground," she announced. "The bad news is that we're staying here for a while. Maybe permanently." Sam Brooks did a quick medical check on everyone while Amy tried to establish contact with Coalition forces. Her communications equipment was barely functional, but she managed to send out a weak distress signal that might be detected if any Coalition ships came looking for them. Ben was already studying the strange cities through the ship's external cameras. "I don't think this planet is as dead as we thought," he said. "Look at this." He had found a maintenance access tunnel that led from their landing site toward the nearest city. The tunnel entrance was clearly artificial, built from some kind of dark metal that showed no signs of corrosion or damage, despite obviously being very old. More importantly, there were lights glowing softly inside the tunnel, suggesting that some kind of power source was still active. Jake made another command. decision. We need to explore and see what we're dealing with. If there's anyone or anything still alive down here, we need to know about it before they decide we're a threat. Amy gathered her translation equipment, while Sam packed a medical kit and emergency supplies. Lisa grabbed her tools and scanning devices, and Ben brought along portable navigation gear in case they got lost underground. Jake checked his sidearm and hoped he would not need to use it. The tunnel was larger than it had appeared from the ship, easily wide enough for 3 people to walk side by side. The walls were smooth and seamless, made from that same dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The soft illumination came from strips embedded in the ceiling, providing just enough light to see clearly without being harsh or glaring. They walked for about 20 minutes before the tunnel opened into a vast underground chamber that took their breath away. The space was enormous, easily as large as a city block, with a domed ceiling that disappeared into shadows far above their heads. Banks of strange machinery lined the walls, their surfaces covered with displays and controls that pulsed with gentle colors. In the center of the chamber stood something that could only be described as a throne, though it was clearly designed for a being much larger than any human. The seat was carved from a single piece of what looked like black crystal, surrounded by floating holographic displays that showed star maps, technical diagrams, and streams of text in an unknown language. As they approached the throne, the displays suddenly shifted to show images of their ship landing and their walk through the tunnel. They were being watched, and whoever was doing the watching knew they were here. A voice spoke from hidden speakers, using perfect English with just a slight electronic tone that suggested artificial origin. "Welcome, humans of Earth," the voice said. "I have been waiting a very long time for someone to find this place. My name is Architect, and I am the last guardian of the Corvan Empire. We have much to discuss." 3 days after the battle, the space around the Liberty's edge looked like a massive rescue operation. Earth Command had sent 12 ships loaded with medical supplies, repair equipment, and diplomatic personnel. The disabled Kethvar vessels were slowly being restored to basic functionality under human supervision. Captain Jake Martinez stood on his bridge watching the rescue operations with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. His crew had worked around the clock to keep hundreds of alien survivors alive while waiting for reinforcements. Now that help had arrived, he finally had time to process what they had accomplished. "Final casualty report, Captain," Dr. Carol Price announced as she entered the bridge. "We have treated over 3,000 Kethvar personnel for various injuries ranging from minor cuts to severe system shock. Thanks to the quick response of our repair teams, we only lost 47 aliens to life support failures. All human personnel remain uninjured." Jake nodded solemnly. 47 deaths was 47 too many, but it could have been much worse. If they had chosen to leave the aliens to die in their disabled ships, the death toll would have been in the tens of thousands. Lieutenant Tony Russo had spent the past 3 days learning everything he could about Kethvar technology and culture. His findings were being transmitted to Earth for analysis by the best military minds humanity had to offer. "Captain, you need to see this," Tony said, bringing up a display on the main screen. "I've been analyzing the cultural and historical databases from their flagship. The Kethvar Collective isn't just one species. They're a coalition of 47 different races that were conquered and forced to serve." Dr. Lisa Harper looked up from her translation work with interest. "That explains some of the confusion in their communications during the battle. Different species were using different terms for the same tactical concepts." Jake studied the information on his screen. The implications were staggering. The Kethvar weren't just conquerors. They were slavers who had built an empire by forcing defeated species to fight their battles for them. Many of the crew members they had rescued were actually prisoners forced to serve on warships. "How many of their personnel are there voluntarily?" Jake asked. Tony checked his data. "About 30% are actual Kethvar. The rest are from conquered species serving under threat to their homeworlds. Some of these people have been slaves for generations." This changed everything. What had started as a simple first contact situation had turned into something much more complex. Jake realized they weren't just dealing with an enemy fleet. They were looking at refugees from dozens of oppressed civilizations. Amy Foster received a priority communication from Earth Command. "Captain, Admiral Peterson wants to speak with you immediately. He says it's about the political situation developing from our encounter." Jake took the communication in his ready. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the edge of the massive briefing hall on Coalition Station Alpha, watching as hundreds of alien officers filled the gleaming seats below. The Zephyrians took the front rows with their tall blue forms and elaborate uniforms, covered in medals and honors. Behind them sat the stocky Vardak representatives in their heavy environmental suits. Then the graceful Silari with their translucent wings folded behind elegant chairs, designed just for their species. Way in the back, almost hidden behind support pillars, the small Earth delegation found whatever seats they could manage. Jake pulled at his worn Earth Navy uniform jacket. The fabric faded from too many washings and patches barely visible where tears had been mended over the years. Next to him, Chief Engineer Lisa Park drummed her fingers on a datapad held together with repair tape, while Navigator Ben Carter shifted nervously in his too large formal dress uniform that had probably belonged to someone else first. Communications. Officer Amy Stone kept her expression neutral, but Jake could see the anger in her dark eyes as she watched the other species ignore their presence completely. Medic Sam Brooks just sat quietly, hands folded, watching everything with the calm patience that made him such a good doctor. The massive holographic display at the front of the hall flickered to life, showing a three-dimensional map of the outer spiral systems. Red dots marked dangerous areas where ancient battlefields still contained unexploded weapons and radioactive debris from wars fought centuries ago. Yellow markers indicated salvage opportunities where valuable materials might be recovered. Green zones showed safe passage routes between the hazards. Admiral Vexitar of the Zephyrian hegemony rose from his seat at the center of the front row. His blue skin gleamed under the hall's lights, and the golden insignia on his chest caught every eye in the room. When he spoke, his voice carried easily through the hall's speakers, translated instantly into dozens of languages for the mixed audience. "Fellow members of the Coalition, we gather today to discuss the cleanup of Sector 7 Alpha, former territory, of the extinct Corvin Empire." Admiral Vextar gestured to the holographic display, and the view zoomed in on a cluster of dead systems near the galaxy's edge. For 500 years, these systems have remained quarantined due to dangerous debris fields and unstable quantum anomalies left behind after the Corvin civilization collapsed. Jake leaned forward slightly, studying the tactical display. He had heard stories about the Corvin Empire since he was a kid, tales of a vast civilization that had once controlled nearly half the known galaxy before vanishing overnight in some mysterious catastrophe. Most spacers considered the old Corvin territories to be cursed, filled with ghost ships and automated defense systems that would attack anything that came too close. The Coalition Science Council has determined that these systems now pose a threat to expanding trade routes, the Admiral continued. Merchant vessels report equipment failures and navigation errors when passing near the quarantine boundaries. We believe that ancient Corvan technology is still active in these regions, sending out interference signals that disrupt modern ship systems. A murmur ran through the assembled officers as they considered the implications. If the old Corvan systems were indeed affecting nearby space lanes, it could cost the Coalition billions in lost trade revenue and delayed shipments. Jake understood why the Coalition wanted the area cleaned up, even if it meant venturing into some of the most dangerous space in the galaxy. Admiral Vextar manipulated the holographic controls, and the display shifted to show detailed mission assignments. Each Coalition member species will contribute vessels and personnel to this operation according to their capabilities and experience. The display highlighted different colored zones. Zephyrian forces will handle the primary military coordination and heavy combat operations. Vardak engineering teams will manage large-scale debris removal and structural demolition. Solari scouts will map safe navigation routes through the hazard zones. Jake waited, knowing what was coming next. The Earth assignment would be last, and it would not be glamorous. Finally, Admiral Vextar's tone shifted slightly, carrying just a hint of amusement that made Jake's jaw tighten. Our newest Coalition members from Earth will handle salvage operations and waste disposal. The Admiral gestured toward the back of the hall where the human delegation sat. Their vessel, the Defiant Scrap, is well suited for such work. Laughter rippled through the hall. Not quite open mockery, but close enough. Jake heard Lisa mutter something under her breath that probably would have gotten her thrown out if the translation systems had picked it up. The Admiral's use of their ship's name had been deliberate, emphasizing the fact that Earth had contributed what was essentially a flying junkyard to this important Coalition operation. The Defiant Scrap had been built from whatever materials Earth could afford after joining the Coalition. The main hull came from 3 decommissioned Earth Navy destroyers welded together end to end. The cargo sections were converted civilian transport modules purchased second-hand from Vardak shipyards. The power plant was a fusion reactor salvaged from an old space station, and the navigation systems had been cobbled together from parts bought at surplus auctions. From the outside, it looked like exactly what it was, a collection of mismatched components held together by determination and engineering skill. I am sure the humans will find plenty of scrap metal to add to their collection, Admiral Vextar added, causing another wave of chuckles from the audience. After all, one species' trash is another's treasure. Ben Carter started to stand up, his young face flushed with anger, but Jake put a firm hand on his shoulder and pushed him back down. Getting into a public argument with a Coalition admiral would not help Earth's reputation, even if the admiral was being deliberately insulting. Amy Stone leaned over to whisper in Jake's ear. "He's trying to provoke us into doing something stupid," she said quietly. "If we make a scene, it gives him an excuse to remove us from the mission entirely." Jake nodded. She was right, as usual. The Coalition needed someone to handle the dirty work of cleaning up after the more important species did their jobs, but they also wanted to make sure the humans knew their place in the galactic hierarchy. Earth was the newest member of the Coalition, with the smallest fleet and the least advanced technology. Every other species had centuries or millennia of spaceflight experience, while humans had only been traveling between star systems for about 50 years. The briefing continued for another hour, covering technical details about radiation hazards, navigational challenges, and communication protocols. Jake took careful notes, knowing that his crew's lives would depend on understanding every aspect of their mission. When the session finally ended, most of the other officers filed out quickly, eager to return to their comfortable quarters and well-equipped ships. Jake gathered his small crew and headed toward the docking bays where the Defiant scrap waited. As they walked through the station's corridors, he could hear other species talking about the upcoming mission. The Zephyrians discussed battle formations and tactical advantages. The Vardak debated engineering solutions for moving massive debris. The Solari planned elegant reconnaissance flights through dangerous asteroid fields. None of them talked about the humans. Lisa was quiet until they reached the ship. Then she exploded. "Trash collection, Jake. They're sending us out there to pick up garbage while the important species do the real work." She kicked at a loose deck plate. "We could run circles around half those ships if we had decent equipment." "Maybe," Jake said, "but we work with what we have." He looked up at their ship, taking in the mismatched hull plates and jury-rigged sensor arrays. The Defiant scrap might not look like much, but she's got heart. Sometimes that matters more than pretty paint and fancy metals. Sam Brooks checked his medical supplies one more time. "How long do we have before departure?" 6 hours, Ben answered, already running pre-flight diagnostics on his navigation console. Assuming nothing else breaks between now and then, Amy was monitoring Coalition communications channels, listening to the chatter between other ships in the fleet. "They're taking bets on how long we'll last out there," she reported. "Current odds are that we'll turn back within the first week." Jake settled into his captain's chair, the worn fabric conforming to his body after years of use. Around him, his crew prepared for what might be the most dangerous mission any Earth ship had ever attempted. The rest of the galaxy saw them as scrap dealers and garbage collectors, but Jake knew better. Humans had not gotten to the stars by giving up when things looked impossible. "All right, people," he said, "let's show them what Earth's scrap ship can do." 6 hours later, the Defiant scrap joined the Coalition fleet as it jumped toward the forbidden Corvin systems, carrying a crew determined to prove that sometimes the galaxy's trash could become its greatest treasure.